I look forward to diving in with you.
Yeah, I love what you're doing too. So thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
So
Let's do that.
before we get into your good work, I want to know this. One of the biggest shapeshifters that happened in our lifetimes was living through this pandemic about 4.5 years ago or so. How much of getting through that time period has sent waves through the work and what you're doing now?
Great question. What was interesting is that around 2 years before the pandemic hit, I was kind of put into a really uncomfortable situation where I was working on healing through a trauma bond, a codependent relationship. So it kind of forced me into a corner where I had no choice but to really master the art of regulating my nervous system. I realized at that time how very poor I was at creating a sense of safety internally, and that I was using external things to validate me and to give me a sense of identity, the external validation of others. And so going through that journey from 2018 onward forced me to face my demons so deeply and master an art, a process of becoming trigger proof, that as soon as the COVID pandemic hit, I was looking around at a world that was falling apart, and I realized, holy crap, like this is easy.
Yeah.
I was able to adapt and pivot my business that was heavily relying on live events, transformational events, to help people, answer the question, should I stay or go, in their relationships, their careers, their transitions in their life, to find the meaning, find who they really are. And as soon as COVID hit, I just applied the exact same tools that I was living, really. I was really living it. And then I applied that and created a brand new community and a new offering, and pivoted so beautifully that I remember telling my staff, my team, I'm like, everyone's going insane right now, but this is like, I feel guilty for saying how great everything is right now.
Yeah.
And so luckily, I was going through hell 2 years before COVID hit. I had acquired the skills of becoming trigger proof. So all of the triggers that were coming up during the pandemic, I was like, wow, this is pretty easy compared to what I went through a couple years ago.
Interesting. So let's get to the brass tacks of what you do on a daily basis to help people. And I want to do it this way. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of kids. It's career day, 10, 11-year olds. And one of the kids in the back of the room is curious and is like, hey, what do you do for a living? What's your answer?
My answer is 10, 11 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm like, all right, I want a show of hands. How many of you sometimes feel the weight of stress? How many of you sometimes feel the weight of anxiety and the pressure of wanting to fit in and be liked by everybody? Show of hands, little boys and girls. Okay. What I do is I teach people how to tune out the outside world and get connected within, understanding what your knowing is, so that you're not so swayed by other people's opinions of you.
So let's get to how we arrived here in your life. What did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
I wanted to be a doctor.
Okay.
Yeah, I always wanted to be a doctor. I knew I wanted to help people. It's just that when I started, understanding medicine or going to the doctor, I was like, why is it that they always want to give me a pill every time? And when I was 13 years old and I went to a career day in school, I went to all the doctors, and one of them was a chiropractor. And I went into the room, and he had his little spine model out. And it was like, oh, there's a spine, there's a different way of looking at the body. They use adjustments. They don't do medicine. They use adjustments to liberate the potential, the nerve impulse and potential within. Let me look into that. And I was hooked at the age of 13. And so I took all the courses in high school and university that kind of led me down that path. I became a chiropractor, and I was 25 when I graduated in 2001. And after about 10 years of doing it, I realized that the problems that people were coming in to see me for were really stress related, were really had to do with holding on to tension and constriction in their body for a prolonged period of time. So no matter how much I would adjust them, if they were going back to that stressful life, I wasn't actually solving the root cause of it. And it wasn't until I went through a divorce and several failed relationships later that had me kind of looking at myself and how I ended up where I was, where I made kind of like a eureka aha moment. And I was like, wait a second, there's a link here between attachment trauma, relational, like relational attachment, and our breakdowns and conflict relationally, grief, the loss of an attachment that causes us to break down mentally. And so it's kind of like this, the health kind of falls apart, but when we go upstream and we look at the point of origin, there was usually a relationship attachment rupture that set that tone for this downward spiral in health. And now we look at mental health and crises, the number one cause is a relational attachment rupture. So in kind of like examining my own life, trying to solve the issues within my own life, which all had to do with relationship attachment, I unwittingly started orienting and kind of like focusing and putting more attention towards that, and unknowingly became an attachment trauma specialist. So my work then became, how do I make sure that I don't repeat these patterns of codependency so that I can have a secure relationship? Once I had that going, I was like, all right, there's some medicine here that I needed to take. I want to kind of like offer that medicine to the world. So now I retired from chiropractic, and now the medicine that I teach is to teach people how to become their own medicine.
I think sometimes people live in a vacuum and they're not cognizant that there was relationship rupture, or there was something that was traumatic that caused this chain of events. What would be your advice to somebody to say, okay, this is what you need to do to see if you do need a level of help that's going to get
Yeah.
you to that next place?
Well, great question. Wow, I love that question. Um, the first thing that you would do is to look at the quality of your relationship. Most of the time, codependency, I didn't realize I was in it, but it's this experience of not feeling safe to express your truth, this feeling of having to put on a mask and not express who you really are, what your desires are, what your values are, because of a fear of having that truth being rejected. It's this experience of constantly minimizing yourself, or um, of not sharing who you really are, because if they really knew who I was, then they would reject me. It's that experience of constantly have to apologize for taking space, feeling like you're a burden, having problems with receiving, manifesting in relational dynamics that feel like there's this push and pull dynamic, this experience of constantly wanting closeness, but never feeling chosen, again and again and again. This feeling of feeling minimized, not feeling seen, not feeling heard, feeling like you have to abandon yourself for the sake of attachment. That, oh, if you're upset, then that means that I'm the bad one. that experience of a lack of boundaries between myself, my energy, my values, and the other person. You're upset, and because of my poor boundaries, your feelings become mine. It's like feeling like a jellyfish, that somebody's mood or upset is intolerable to me without me getting reactive and feeling responsible to have to fix it. These frustrating push and pull, should I stay or go dynamics where I can't feel like I can have you and myself at the same time. I might as well just give up on relationships, or just give up on, you know, just I'll just give up on myself and just comply, is a childhood repetitive pattern that is so familiar growing up in relational dynamics with family, that we tend to repeat what was familiar. Familiar means like family. So these unconscious familiar patterns of seeking safety and validation outside of us and abandoning ourselves for the sake of attachment because we're so paralyzed to be alone, this insecurity is a good red flag that there's something in there that requires some understanding, some healing, some skills that we never got. And the skill and the trauma responses of fight, flight, freeze, and fawn are our responses in childhood to keep us safe.
Yeah.
The fight is fighting back, poking. Flight is running away from problems. Freezing is when you're hiding because, speaking up was not safe. Or a very poorly understood one is called fawning, where you appease, where you abandon yourself and you just appease and are agreeable so that you can calm that person down and bring yourself into safety. These strategies of keeping us safe in childhood absolutely destroy our relationship dynamics in adulthood and create kind of like this sense of frustrating, insecure relational dynamics that are that impact your health and your sanity.
Wow, what a groundbreaking answer. That is so deep because everybody out there has to be able to relate to that. And with that being said, it's probably pretty easy for people to understand the help that they would need. Um, so I'm curious, the one thing that gets us through all of these challenges in life is to have a really good inspirational force behind us, a hero. Who has that been for you?
Wow. I mean, I've been lucky. If I can see far, it's because I stand on the shoulders of giants. The first one that comes to mind was a teacher that came in and spoke to my first year class in chiropractic school. His name was Dr. John Dimartini, and his talk just brought me to tears and expanded the realm of what's possible for me. And that was in October of 1997, October of 1997, excuse me. And he addressed the entire school. I was 1 month into my chiropractic practice, well, chiropractic school. And he just opened up my mind, John DeMartini, and his kind of teaching of what becomes possible when we expand, our view, our perceptions of what's there. That after I graduated and I was kind of stuck, maybe 2002, 2003, I was kind of stuck in my practice wanting some guidance. I looked him up, and he was in the region. He was in Seattle. And I drove down from Vancouver, where I lived at the time, and I attended a workshop with him, like a 3-hour workshop that just completely, like, it blew my mind, because what he would do is he would shift the way that I would look at something, the context in which I would look at something, and gave me some practices and exercises that literally expanded me within a week. And I was like, wow. So needless to say, I just dove into learning from him. And so he's the first kind of like mentor that I have. But one of the things that he taught me was to not put people on pedestals. So I don't classify others as heroes. I see them as guides and instructors, and I make sure that when I'm guiding and instructing people, when they start to put me, I notice when they start to put me on the pedestal, I quickly turn it back to them because, the worst thing that could happen is you actually meet your heroes in real life and realize that they're actually human. They stop being heroes. So why don't you just save yourself the time and just don't put people on pedestals and appreciate what they're teaching you as guides?
Yeah. In my other incarnation of podcasting, I do a jazz radio show, and there's musicians that are always playing an instrument, and it's this ever expanding world. It's like the universe after the Big Bang. It never stops, and there's always this infinite field of wonder. And I think about that with the chiropractic arts. The spine is such a sensitive organ, it's such a sensitive part of our body that guides so many things. What have you learned over the years about the spine and about what you do?
Well, it's not so much the spine as it is the nervous system. The
Right.
spine is the housing. The spine is kind of like the protective casing for this really delicate system called a nervous system. So I'd rather jam about the magic and the mystery of the nervous system. And so what I've learned about, I started off in adjusting the spine to produce a more balanced state in the nervous system, which is very effective. But the question is, what has been my conditioning in my nervous system that has put me at a disadvantage in life, in relationships? And conditioning is the wiring of what I believe to be true about myself. And that is a very powerful phenomenon in the nervous system, which is it creates your whole identity. Let me give you an example. You're raised in an environment that you had parents that were dissociated. Their nervous systems were in disarray. Their nervous systems were in fight or flight or a freeze response because of the unresolved trauma. You're a child and you are trying to connect. You survive. Your nervous system survives by attuning to your parents. But if they're disconnected from their nervous system, when you're trying to connect to them, their faces are completely flat because of what we call a dorsal vagal shutdown, where they've had so much trauma that it's like their soul has left their body. They've done actually, I want you to look this up. You look up the still face experiment on YouTube. If you look it up, Edtronic, the still face experiment, it shows how mothers, when they're engaging with their infants, the infants are being attuned and their nervous system is catching on that sense of safety. But all of a sudden you have the mother turn around and then come and create this still face. Within a very short period of time, that baby starts to become very dysregulated because they're not feeling a connection. And it's really triggering to watch because you see the child struggling to get connection from a mother who's just like, right? And so you start to think, how many of us were raised with parents whose nervous systems were dysregulated, were in a freeze response because of the trauma, which resulted in us not feeling a connection, looking for safety, and not getting it, and not having our nervous systems go from activation, high level stress, to then safety, because children cannot regulate their nervous systems. One of the roles of parents is to help teach a child to bring themselves into safety. Little do most parents understand that. So because of that lack of training, because of that lack of education, our nervous systems will go into dysregulation, and that little child inside of us constantly for the rest of our lives seeks to find that sense of safety outside.
Interesting.
And because of that external orientation of safety, we disconnect from ourselves and we walk around with anxiety disorders, relationship challenges, codependency, seeking safety and harmony outside of us. And that is the primary abandonment, rupture that we have from ourselves because of parents whose nervous systems are not safe. So, the most important thing that a person can learn is how to regulate their nervous system. Of course, getting chiropractic care is very powerful because you're having somebody adjust areas that are locked up, frozen, and it can provide a great sense of like openness in the nervous system. But what's more important is we as humans take on the work, stop delegating to doctors, and learn how to become our own medicine to our nervous systems.
So let me ask you this. How do you balance all of this out? You're dealing with heavy stuff, helping people get to a better place, but you
Mm.
are a human that needs to evolve and grow yourself. What's that balance for you every day to do that at the best?
Every day, well, over here, you can see right there is my chair. That's
Yeah.
my little chair there in my office. I sit and I do nervous system exercises. I do meditations or what I call integrations. I do shadow work, which is paying attention to all of the dark material that's residue in the nervous system. And through attention, focus, concentration, bringing it to safety. So there's inner work that I do, making sure that I'm getting a lot of sleep and playtime. I dance with my son. I have a 4-year-old. Dance with my son, connect with my wife. I go skiing quite a bit. I play music and dance. So keep going to the gym. I have a appointment with my trainer in the next couple of hours. So what I do is I make sure that self-care is the priority, that I'm filling up my own cup first so that I can offer to others plenty of time to rest, rejuvenate, spending time. I live within nature, and sauna, cold plunge. So all these nervous system activities, I'm living it, and that's what I'm teaching.
So let's say you have a dream tonight, run into the 18-year-old version of you, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained. What advice would you give your young self?
Learn how to love yourself. Learn how, get a really good guide and a mentor, and, excuse me, unlearn all the conditioning of self-abandonment that you've were raised into. Find your own identity beyond what was the identity that was given to you, and learn how to love yourself.
Wow. So what's the biggest risk that you've taken in your life up to this point?
Leaving my chiropractic practice to teach this full time,
Yeah.
going into an abusive, toxic relationship and coming out of it, pleading guilty in a court of law and saying, I just want to own all of my mistakes and use this as a platform to then help others with the exact same problem that they don't even realize that they're having. And I'm grateful for those risks that I took.
So of everything that you've done and evolved into at this point in your life, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
I'm a dad. I'm a really good dad. The fact that everything that I've gone through, I'm raising a son in a really secure household, the home that feels like a sanctuary and not a battlefield. The thing I'm most proud of is the amount of work and skill that I have acquired, which is not school smarts, it's actually embodiment of learning how to become a secure husband, a secure partner in a from an insecure, codependent, trauma bonded relationship dynamic. The journey that I went through to become secure, I'm most proud of that, and how I'm raising a son to be a secure individual who's not looking for an identity or validation outside of him, who knows who the fuck he is.
So when you turn that camera, I saw MJ over there. You're a big sports fan?
Yeah, I have Kobe and MJ All-Star game, because right now I've gotten to a place where now I'm training people who are leaders in how to embody authentic leadership. So that moment was when kind of like Jordan, Kobe was a rookie,
Yeah.
and Jordan was kind of like imparting all of his hard earned wisdom to this new kid, and I feel like I'm doing that now in my work, is that I'm now not just looking for followers, I'm finding people who are leaders, who want to be embodied leaders, and I'm imparting everything that I've learned to them. So that's very symbolic.
That's awesome. So let me ask you this. We get off the call, time machine pulls up, and you can go to one game in the history of sport and see it with your own eyes. Where are you going?
Oh, obviously the game six of the Utah Jazz and Chicago Bulls
It's
when
always that one. It's always that
it
one in
really is.
basketball. Yes,
It was the best. The last 3 minutes of the game were just magic.
Man, I remember those games growing up, and I don't want to be the old guy in the room, but there was so much fun. And I'm coming from a Kansas City Chiefs fan point because I feel that all the time now with this team. That's what
Yeah,
they do. It's that
yeah.
whole last thing. They're always coming from behind. And as a fan, I know it creates a lot of heart attacks, but it's so much fun to watch.
Yeah, yeah. And last night, Canada just beat the U.S. in the World Cup of Hockey, so we were pretty stoked about
And
that.
good for you guys, because I did want to apologize up front. I feel ashamed. I really do.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
another half down here that is completely not agreeing with the lunacy that's getting
yeah.
dispelled into the world.
Yeah, yeah. It's sad that it's gotten to that, but the game ended up becoming a lot more political than I remember it being, right? I'm happy that I'm but the Canadians, what we really felt that this game was more than just a hockey game. It meant a
Yeah,
lot
absolutely.
to for us to actually win that.
Good for you guys. I love the Canadians. I always have, and I feel ashamed that
Yeah,
this is happening. I really do to my core.
totally. I get you. I see you. I understand, Joe.
So let me ask you this. Everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Wow. Um, Somebody who's really committed to getting to the truth,
Yeah.
who's more committed to the truth above anything else. And so, yeah, even if it's uncomfortable.
And there you go. My previous point of what's going on right now is the reason why it's so hard for the other half of us in America right now, because it's not the truth. So I'm going to ramble on and rumble through the truth as much as I can. I totally agree.
Beautiful.
So let me ask you this: if anyone out there has questions, you've risen, you've answered a lot of questions, but you've probably given people levels of coming to you with more. If anyone wants to hire you, any of the good business in your world, where can they go?
Um, my website, drnima.com, is a really great way to get in touch with me. I have an Instagram. I'm very easily accessible online, and any questions or anything, I think I provided a great place to begin in the show notes. My team, I think, has provided
Yes.
a link that is the place I began in my journey in that relational dynamic is understanding your attachment style, whether you're anxiously attached or ambivalent. Um, it's called avoidant attached or fearful avoidant, which is also disorganized, or securely attached. Finding your attachment style is the best place to begin. And I provide a little quiz that takes about 7, 10 minutes to complete, and then it gives you your results. And I provided that link for anybody who really is curious about finding where's the best place to begin.
And I will put those in the show notes. Dr. Nima, this has been revealing and wonderful. Thank you so much, sir, for your time and for your story. And best of luck. Keep doing the wonderful work, man.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you. All right.